I know, I'm really late to this one. I've been busy. Anyways, my 8-year wait for Granblue Fantasy Relink is finally over, and I've talked about my impressions from the demo, and I want to give you my full thoughts on the game as a whole. A lot of previews from what I watched were telling me that Granblue Relink was going to be not really a JRPG, it's going to be lighter on the story, and that holds true. The main campaign wraps up probably within about 12 to 20 hours, it's not that long. Even the post-game story won't take you especially long if you factor out the grinding to power up your characters. In a sense, this game is very Monster Hunter. Now hear me out, because I know I said in my original video that this game is not like Monster Hunter at all. By this, I just simply mean the grinding for gear. You're spending a lot of time grinding mats and money and sigils, so basically your investment in the narrative is welcome, but it's not necessary. That is not the core part of this game. And unfortunately, for that case, the narrative here is nothing to get too invested in. It's kind of rushed and a bit generic. A very predictable and kind of flat story. It's not the worst thing I've ever played, but you really should not expect it to blow your mind, because it's not going to. Every time they throw a twist or something in, it's the most obvious thing. You're just like, yeah, that might as well happen. Speaking of which, that's kind of what the writing is like too. Playing this game for the story is not something I recommend. There's nothing super interesting going on, and a lot of core story events feel very phoned in. It's disappointing when you consider the amazing set pieces Cygames was working with, because, man, some of the locales and some of the monsters and all of the cinematic moments are beautiful, they're awesome, they're great, but it's not enough to carry the narrative of the game. And the core of the game is those fights, those big set pieces, but the story never really does anything with it. I fully understand that story was never going to be the main focus of this game, but at the very least, if that was the case, I wish they let me at least trudge through it with my friends, because you can't even do that. If you want to do the multiplayer, like the big multiplayer component of this game, it is locked behind you finishing that story. It definitely feels like this is the section where the game suffers the most, and I wish there was more put into this area of the game.
We're in deep doo-doo!
The core of this game is grinding gear, like I said before. There's a lot to do, and some of it requires you to RNG out traits, which is a pain, but nevertheless, this is the meat of the game. You'll be fighting and refighting a lot of bosses for materials, money, resources. You'll be upgrading multiple weapons, building characters to suit your style. You might say this sounds like Monster Hunter, and that's true in a sense. However, the gameplay itself is nothing like Monster Hunter. This game is a semi-fast-paced anime hack-and-slash game. You can pull off some simple combos on small mobs, but most of the time you'll be fighting these giant bosses. And again, the set pieces for this are fantastic. Most of the bosses are pretty cool, but you're going to be fighting a few that left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. Obviously, not all of these can hit. There's huge spectacle to this game that many JRPGs wish they had or wish they could do. Every character has a basic combo and a special move they can use. The special move may change during the combo depending on your character. You can also equip 4 skills and use them at your leisure. In that sense, some of the characters are very customizable. Gran, your main character, or the main character who you name, for instance, can be used as a support or a DPS. However, some characters do not have a diverse moveset, so they're more relegated to the role that they're given. But regardless, there are 20 characters, so someone has to fit your playstyle somewhere in there. Yodarha is a quick DPS that focuses on building his 3 stacks to make his skills stronger. Vasaraga is a bulky fighter that can face tank big attacks. And Io is a mage that focuses on charging up her big move. There's a lot of characters with a lot of different playstyles, and I think that's really the selling point of this game. I think the fact that the combat is fun and this loop is very entertaining and engaging is what drives home what Cygames was trying to create. This game is a multiplayer experience. The combat has layers, but it's not incredibly complex either. It's easy enough for you to understand on a base level, and your main focus is going to be trying to figure out character mechanics.
You could've just told us you can't stand cats.
When I was a kid, I got scratched by one. It left a scar
And like I've been saying, this is the thing I have to gush about the game the most, really, is the visuals. The graphics are gorgeous. This art style is so good. Cygames really makes Granblue stand out with the art style. It's something that has always caught my eye, even with the mobile game, which I only played maybe about an hour or so of. The environments themselves are vibrant, and the cities are beautiful. There's clear attention to detail. There's so much care put into the way this game looks, and it really does make it stand out from other anime games, because unlike something, let's say, this is kind of low-hanging fruit of a comparison, but Tales of Arise or Scarlet Nexus, these games have like a mixture of art styles, where they have this... Tales of Arise sometimes has this like watercolor painted background looking effect, but the actual game doesn't totally look like that. The character models look like most other Bandai Namco anime game models. They're not stylized in that same way. Same goes for Scarlet Nexus. You have these characters in this kind of hyper-realistic environment with these hyper-realistic monster designs. Whereas with Granblue Fantasy Relink, all of the character models are stylized the same way the environments are. It meshes so well together. Every inch of this game looks like eye candy, and if you're looking for some kind of visual flair, I hope other studios are taking notes in some way. But on the other hand of the presentation, there is something a bit weird with the dialogue in this game. It feels very, like, mid-2000s, I want to say. There's a lot of that, well, that just happened kind of humor and moments in there.
So that just happened.
And the all's well that ends well, I guess, kind of events. It's really not a bad thing, it just feels a bit dated. Which, you know, if your game was in development for 8 years, I think that can just kind of happen. Ironically enough. But one thing I want to definitely point out and definitely praise is having the main character actually speak their lines. This is something I've talked about for tons of games. When you have dialogue options, sometimes you don't need to have a silent protagonist. Instead, they can speak their line. Just because you name a character does not automatically make them a self-insert. And in this case, Gran has his own backstory and personality. So while the captain is mostly silent, they get to speak the lines they choose instead of just making grunting noises.
Wait, really?
Yeah. You mostly just go, and and stuff until you need to make a decision.
Exactly.
So putting all of that together, Cygames has really flexed their strong arms when it comes to presentation. So if you're looking for something visually stunning, this is where it's at.
Shame we couldn't see eye to eye. Oh well, R.I.P., buddy.
Ugh, that's it. No more puns this entire trip.
Granblue Fantasy Relink is truly something fantastic. It's nice to know that some companies enter the gacha space to fund their AAA dreams, because this is awesome. While the story is a little bit rough, the rest of Relink really comes together and holds up. You can feel the world coming to life with the stunning visuals and have a ton of fun beating down these big bosses. There are some missions that are kind of a slog, and if you're looking for a big exploration-focused game, you're not going to find it here. Unfortunately, the further you go into the story, the less explorable the areas become. There's one giant open area, it's a desert. Most of the rest of the game is not centered on that at all. But every other beat of Relink is masterfully crafted from start to finish, especially if you have some friends who are willing to tear through the grind with you. And I hope this is a sign of things to come too, because with this game's success, there will hopefully be consistent support with new bosses and new characters for at least a few months. I know they have a schedule out till May. By the time this video is published, I'm sure they would have talked about it already, but I'm hoping that the launch support goes past May into maybe at least half a year until September. That'd be pretty nice. And I also hope that this being Cygames' first big AAA title, that there's a lot more for them to explore, whether they make more Granblue games or spin off another IP, or make a sequel to Relink somewhere down the line. I just want to see what they've got in store. So what do you think of Granblue Fantasy Relink? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you not like it? Do you wish there was more story? Or maybe you didn't play it at all, given there's a lot of games coming out? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like, and you can subscribe to the channel for more things JRPG related. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.